Hello, this is Cycle 2, Week 10 Science, Facility Cleanup or Community Service. Your first thought might be, why is he making a video? I am making a video for this because I love this idea. I am happy that it is part of the plan for Cycle 2. I think it's a great idea that CC is promoting, and I want to remind you to remind your students and parents of your students that science is everywhere. Science is everywhere. Science surrounds us, and so it's always possible to bring in a little bit of science no matter what we're doing. No matter what we're doing. For example, if you're doing a facility cleanup, then maybe the plan is to go outside and to plant new plants. Maybe, depending on the time of year, the plan is to go outside and to rake leaves or to go outside and pick up trash, something like that. But if you're doing anything with plants that's outside, I highly recommend that you talk about the difference of animals and plants. Remind your students, especially the older students, that the strict definition of what life is, what is living, is kind of hard. It's kind of difficult to succinctly define, but we all have an intuitive understanding of what living things are. And children readily understand that animals are living things, largely because they move around so much, they have so much activity, and children interact with them a lot. And so it's very easy to see that animals are alive. But remind them that plants are very much alive. They meet all the definition of life, and they're an important part of this world that God created for us. You could talk about even more in-depth differences of how plants are structured in terms of their cells. You could talk about plant life cycles versus animal life cycles. You've got lots of opportunities depending on what it is exactly you're doing. If you're cleaning up trash, then I suggest you talk about how man is made in the image of God. Man is at the pinnacle of the creation that God put here on earth, and therefore we have a special obligation to the rest of that creation. That we always must clean up after ourselves, and that sometimes we have to clean up after other people. And that's an important part of what we do. Maybe it's too cold to be outside where you are. Maybe you're inside. Maybe you're cleaning up the facility itself, wiping down tables or other forms of cleaning. If that's the case, then I would definitely talk about whatever cleaning utensils you're using. Maybe, for example, you're using Norwex or some other e-cloth if you're a green community, and that's something that you want to do. Talk about how the microfibers contain about 10% silver, and how they're not so much sterilizing and killing germs and bacteria, but they're more collecting them onto the cloths, where then they can be rinsed away and or killed by the silver that's present. If you're using more traditional cleansers, maybe soaps or other things like that, then talk about the chemistry of soaps. Soap is so cool. Soap is one molecule that has two different parts. It has a hydrophilic and a hydrophobic part. Literally, hydrophobic, a water-fearing part; hydrophilic, a water-loving part. What that really means is that the hydrophilic pieces are miscible with water and have a lot of water-like properties. The hydrophobic parts are not miscible with water and don't. They more closely resemble something like grease. Which is how soap works. So that as the soap product is squirted into your hand and then put into the aqueous environment or into a water bucket where we're going to use it then to clean with, the soap molecules spontaneously form micelles. These are three-dimensional structures so that the hydrophilic pieces are around out into the aqueous environment. All the hydrophobic parts are together. They're pushed to the inside of the micelle where they're not in contact with the water. Because germs and dirt and various things like that are typically hydrophobic, then they're very miscible with those hydrophobic parts. They're not at all miscible in the aqueous environment, and so they move inside the micelles where they become trapped, and then they're just simply washed away and cleaned away. A great example, something that you could talk about. If you're not doing facility cleanup, maybe you're doing community service. Maybe you're putting together care packages for chemotherapy patients or for kids who are in the hospital. Maybe you're participating in something like Operation Christmas Child, other opportunities to serve. Talk about our bodies. Talk about how God has made our bodies wonderfully, fearfully made, so complex. That even with our amazing understanding of how the world works, there is still so much left that we have to discover. And in some cases to discover about the way our own bodies work and how disease affects our bodies. Those are the kinds of things that I would talk about. It's also worthwhile mentioning, in my opinion, that God made man unique with both a body and with a soul. made in the image of God. That immortal soul that is an essence of who we are makes us capable of choosing to love. We don't love our children out of instinct the way animals do, but we love our children because we choose to love them as God has first loved us. And so those are the kinds of things that you could easily talk about as you're doing community service. So whether you're doing community service or cleanup, remember, science is everywhere, and there's always an opportunity to bring it into the discussion of what you're doing. This is Cycle 2, Week 10 Science.